Glitter Gang. Happy Thursday. It's time for more Christmas in July. And it's also book club day. So that's what we have going on in this part. Today we'll be discussing Lock Every Door by Riley Sager, and there will be spoilers. So I would just warn you that if you ever intend on reading that book and you don't want to know anything about it, maybe skip this until you've read it. All right, so here we have the POUCH-A-LOPEs from the previous, episodes in this series. And what we've done is, well, let me flip it to the back. Where we left off is we were decorating them. So we still have decorating to do on 8 of our 12 POUCH-A-LOPEs to add the pattern paper on the back and the closures. Now, one thing I have done is I have added the inserts. All right, so I added 2 4 1/4 by 6 1/4 inch photo mats to the inside of all of the envelopes, except for I think one of them, just to save a little bit of time when we get to that point. All right, but for the most part, what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be doing the pattern paper. So hopefully I can remember what size pattern paper I used. I don't. So we're off to a great start. All right, let's say hi to everybody. Who have we got today? So first comment I see is from Joyce, who says, yay, we get to discuss the book today. I've been reading a lot more lately, enjoying it very much. Have gone back and read some of the other selections that didn't get the most votes. Actually, this month I read all 3 of the books, so I can let you know if I think you made the right choice. Candy says, happy Thursday, glittery ones. Happy Thursday to Candy and to Fran. To Sandra, hello, Glitter Gang. Yes, hi, Glitter Gang. How are all of you? Happy Thursday, Kathryn. Hello, Linda. Carol Joan. Judy. Kimberly's here. Bev says hello. Ellen says it's glitter day and Ellen got her Cricut maker. Barbara Jean is here. Vicky, hello, how are you? Hi to Donna and to Ella. Gretchen is here with Pat. Pat's with Gretchen in the physical sense. And then hello from Sally Ann Snickerbucker, just in time for a roll call. Exactly, just in time. Okay, let me measure what I've got going on here and then make a note on my cheat sheet. Okay, so the flap, I think the flap is 3 1/4. Yes, it is, by 8 5/8. So flap PP 8 5/8 by 3 1/4, and we'll call it back PP for the other piece, which is 4. I know it's 4 1/4 actually, because I know the flap is 1 inch bigger. Yeah, I don't need to measure that one, so I do kind of remember it. All right, cool. And all of the measurements for everything in this book are available in the previous videos in this series, which are available on YouTube. They're also in the archives if you have the archives, so you have them both places. All right, so I'm going to flip this stack over. So I'm now on the front, so we've got, just going to actually move the stack elsewhere so that it's not in my space. Okay, so I went and I took the discs and I kind of clipped them all together so they dry flat-ish. They're not going to dry flat because we did have liquid glue on them. And so I'm just going to pick well, I don't need to pick from these until I've picked the pattern paper. So let's grab our pattern paper and get going. I know my hand is hurting. Specifically my thumb is bothering me. It doesn't do it too often. I'm pretty lucky because even with the injury, it doesn't bother me too often. However, it does occasionally bother me. So, all right. So I said I would use both sides of a paper unless it was kind of boring. And this is an example of where, I mean, it looks fine, but I think we could combine these patterns with different patterns and they could be cuter. Like these two patterns, I think are a little cuter together. And this is a little bit busy. So I'm going to combine these two patterns and then we'll just see. Okay, so how did everyone feel about Lock Every Door? Was it your new favorite or no, not a new favorite? Lock Every Door by Riley Sager is a thriller about a spooky apartment building, a mystery thriller. It's been compared to Rosemary's Baby, which is, I do not think, accurate. I think the people that say that are basing that completely off the fact that they both take place in spooky apartment buildings, because that's pretty much where the similarities end. All right, so I cut that top piece to 8 5/8 by 3 1/4, and then I'm going to cut the bottom to 8 5/8 by 4 1/4. Do I think something like that could actually go on? Yeah. In the sense that there could be some kind of systemic mistreatment of marginalized groups to harvest their organs. Yeah, I think that could happen. I think that does go on in China right now with, they have a religious minority there that I think they use for organ harvesting. So, gosh, I wish I could remember. So I definitely think that there's been abuses like that. Do I think a private group of individuals would do it? No, I think that's more something like that the government does. Governments do, totalitarian governments. But yeah, there are definitely places on Earth where this is going on now. So that's kind of spooky to think about. All right. So do we like Joy Peace Noel? I kind of do. What about the black market? Yeah, like can you go on the dark web and buy a kidney? Maybe. I don't know about that. Because I don't spend a lot of time on the dark web. Unfortunately, I don't have the right knowledge. I kind of like Yuletide Greetings better, actually. So that's the one I'm going to go with. I like how we immediately, right out of the gate, were with spoilers. We didn't even give people a chance to think about whether or not they wanted to click off for a second. It was just like, what about organ harvesting, though? Let's just come right out the door with the twist. Okay, so let's see. All right, Ella loved the book, or I think she loved Where the Crawdads Sing, actually. So I don't think I think she might have been talking about Where the Crawdads Sing. Joy said she's read other books that are more thrilling. Yeah. My problem with this book um, is I think this book had all of the elements that a good thriller has, but for some reason it was missing the alchemy that makes it a truly great thriller. So, was the writing competent? Sure. Was the setting really interesting? Sure. Were there spooky elements present? Sure. Was it thrilling? I didn't think it was all that thrilling. Um, and maybe that was just me. I'm not saying it's bad. I don't think this book is bad at all. Um, but it didn't feel like I wasn't like I wonder what's gonna you know. And then there were some elements to it that I think were they're a little tropey at this point. So, for example, the dumbwaiter. Anytime there's any kind of piece of media with a dumbwaiter, I'm thinking, um, you know, uh, here we go. Someone's going in or coming out of that dumbwaiter. Like, there's no reason to have a dumbwaiter anymore in anything unless you need the dumbwaiter later in the book. So when she couldn't figure out how things were getting in and out of her apartment, it was like, well, it's the dumbwaiter, idiot. Um, Also, she was not smart. So I think that harms the thriller. If you're constantly looking up at, or if you're constantly looking at the main character going, why are you doing this? Why are you like this? Then that harms the book, I think. Some things that I thought were good. I thought it was good to have a main character who had very few resources, because I think a lot of times in thrillers, people have to go on the run, and you know, they have the money to buy whatever it is that they need, or they have places to go, or something like that. And that was not present in this book, so that was interesting. So that I definitely thought was good to have. And then I also thought that there was the potential to have a really interesting discussion about how the extremely wealthy use up the economically depressed people who work for them, and how they take advantage of that to exploit them in ways that is really unfair. And of course, that's something our country's had a history of, you know, since the industrialization, and people used to have to work 16-hour days in factories where they could die. So, that, but I didn't think they went far enough with that. And I think the reason it didn't feel like it went far enough for me was because of the organ harvesting thing. Because as soon as we got to the organ harvesting thing, we crossed into like weird urban legend, fireside tales, I woke up in a bathtub with no kidneys territory. I almost would have preferred it if they'd been in a cult, I think, where they were using people for sacrifices. I think I might have liked that better, because then it could be that they were literally like using them to make themselves wealthier, which because they were casting these spells to become more successful or something like that. I know that sounds even stupider, but I think I would have liked it better. Like, I would have liked it if she'd run into the basement and there was a cult down there, and then you could say it was like Rosemary's Baby. So I can't. So I don't know. I don't. I don't know. So what do you think about that? What do you think? I did. So Gretchen says that she liked that everyone in the building was in on it. Yeah, I don't think you could have something like that going on without everyone in the building being in on it. But yes, it did give a reason for everyone being so creepy. I need to write the next book club book. I'm just gonna try a bunch of different. I want to see which corner looks the best. I'm gonna just do. Is it 1/4 or 3/8? All right. So, yeah, I think it is 3/8. Okay. I need to write that next book club book. Well, I mean, it is, I believe, easier to critique than to create. So, when someone's 80% of the way there, it's easier to help them get to 100. But, the the amount of effort they had to put into getting 80% there is so difficult. So, I just want to throw out there also that I rated this book 3 stars, which I consider to be a good rating. So, I didn't think it was bad, but yeah, let's back up. Let's go back to the beginning. So our main character is named Jules. And Jules, welcome. Jules has lost her job at the same time that her boyfriend has cheated on her, and she wants to move out of her apartment because of that, or has to move out of his apartment. I don't know. She's got to move. So she sees an ad on Craigslist for a job that pays something crazy, like $4,000 a week or something, for apartment sitting at the Bartholomew, which is one of the most exclusive and oldest and fanciest apartment buildings. Oh my gosh. Wow. This is going to be a rough one. I can see that already. Apartment buildings in New York City. And it's modeled after the Dakota. Okay, so the apartment was his, so that's why she had to move out. Okay, cool. So yeah, it's modeled after the Dakota. And everyone who lives in it's basically got to be a billionaire. And that's the apartment building, right? So there's a lot of rules for said thing. It's completely under the table for starters, which if a rich person offers you an under the table job, like, you should worry about that, because they like writing stuff off on their taxes. So they're probably going to murder you if they give you a job with no paperwork. So just watch out for that. And her friend is like, this job sounds super sketchy. I don't think you should take it. So she does get good advice. Her friend is clearly thinking, she clearly has plenty of brain cells that she's working with. But you know why I thought this was so hard to do? That's because before I stuck this down and I went through all the layers to the back. So I just made that a lot harder on myself than I needed to. Gretchen says you should be especially concerned if the job pays way more than it should, because rich people don't get rich by being generous. Absolutely. Absolutely. So she takes and the job has a bunch of rules. First of all, you have to get a blood test, which I'm just going to reiterate. If you have to get a blood test before working for someone, and it's not a job where that makes sense, like, don't take that job. Don't take that. There were a lot of red flags. So I think part of the problem with Jules is, there's a lot of red flags. However, there's a possibility that you could consider that some form of social commentary, which is, there's a point where, you're so desperate that even though there are a million red flags, you do it anyway because you don't have any other choices, which I think is what he being Riley Sager was going for with it. Like, I just wish that had been more clear, in the sense that Jules was really, really, really sure that this was a bad job and that it was going to be dangerous, or there was definitely something super weird about it, but she did it anyway. Okay, so this is one of the ones where this is a Brad setter by We Are Memory Keepers. That is I got a question, was what tool did you use to open the Brad? It's got a piercing tool on one end and then this triangular thing to spread the feet of the Brad. I've got to cut 1/8 of an inch off of this because this is one of the envelopes where I had to trim it a lot. So let me just trim this and I'll be right back. I'll be right back. See, now I'm the person who dies in the horror movie. Now, they are making Lock Every Door into a movie, so you all have already seen it and you're all ready. But, so, and I think that's where it was. Like, I think that I would have preferred more focus on kind of the social implications and less on how Jules was just running around here, there, and everywhere. For someone who's so desperate to get this money, she also is breaking tons of rules all the time. So I felt like her motivations were kind of mixed. Like she wasn't good enough friends with the other person to have been so invested, that sort of thing. I don't know. Like, maybe I would have liked it better if she hadn't seen the ad on Craigslist, but she had already been friends with that other person. And while she was down on her luck, she ran into her and she was like, oh, come work at my apartment building. There's tons of openings, And then she disappeared. I don't know. All right, so here we go. Yes, how cute. We got another one done. So yeah. All right, let's. All right, I don't know if anyone else had any thoughts along those lines, but those were some things that I was thinking of as I was reading the book. That being said, it did move along quite a good pace. Like, there wasn't any point where I'm like, all right, just get to something, just move it along already. But it did have all of the classic. You didn't like the Doctor at all? No, the Doctor sucked. I mean, he was totally. Well, I thought he was clearly villainous. But, maybe that's just me. I don't think he was supposed to come across that way, or maybe he was. Maybe he was supposed to come across as super villainous. What did you think? Did you think he was supposed to be supposed to seem like he was a villain, or do you think he was supposed to feel like someone you could identify with and sympathize with, and that maybe he would be an ally to our main character? All right, so I'm cutting the next patterns of paper. Down. And I've got this plus this, which is from the back of it. That's cute. And then with these two, I think we'll go with the bell. So, all right. He even helped her write it down in the dumbwaiter. Yeah, yeah. He was, I don't know. I don't know what was up with his character. Yeah, he was, I don't know. He was creepy. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if he was supposed to seem villainous or not. And I think it's because, like, you know, were we supposed to think that he was just like, oh, I don't care about being rich. I just want to help people. He's potentially a good guy. He's potentially an ally. Because if that was the case, I don't think he came across that way at all. Like, there wasn't a point where I was like, oh, he's definitely on your side. Sure. Now, one thing that he did do was provide an explanation for why there were so many people with so many health problems in the building and so many people with like really severe health problems, like why there's a dialysis machine just hanging out, things like that. And so, you know, he kind of gives the ability to hand wave those things, which at the end, of course, becomes so much more sinister. Would it work to add a score mark a 1/4 inch away on the envelope side to give a bit of extra room? I mean, if you want to use the envelopes to like stuff a bunch of things in them, you could make them thicker, sort of like the envelopes from last year's Christmas project, which is also on YouTube, last year's Christmas in July, where we made that stadium box with, well, those sort of boxy envelopes. So look at last year's Christmas in July. Well, actually, I think Christmas in July was the paper bag album, but I also made that stadium box as well. I don't know. Is that on YouTube? I don't know where I do anything. Oh, well. But, yeah, so you can check out that project from Christmas last year. Oh, no, that one happened in December. I did that one actually around Christmas time, the stadium box. So, all right, now before I punch and ink this one, I'm just going to see if it fits on the flap now that we, you know. No, the one for our book club projects was not made with Christmas paper. That one was the Scrappy Bowl project, but the Christmas version was kind of a prototype of the Scrappy Bowl one where I was testing some ideas that I later incorporated into Scrappy Bowl. Okay, so we've got those. Ink them with the festive berries and stick them down. But yeah, so Jules takes this job that's too good to be true. She does her blood test. She gets the job. Everyone in the hotel is acting creepy and weird all the time, except for the doorman and this doctor. If you think this doctor isn't creepy, though, I think he's not supposed to be creepy, but whatever. And one of the people the reason she takes the job partially is because she's obsessed with this hotel because one of the residents has written a book about it. That's her favorite book, and um, you know, her sister disappeared when she was growing up, and she relates this book to that, just to her sister and to the disappearance. So the book means a lot to her personally. So it's also, you know, really important to her to be able to live in this apartment building and meet this author who she does meet. And there's an arc there that is, oh gosh, what do I want to say about that? Unbelievable is what it is. I didn't buy it. The author did not sell it to me. How did you feel about the author coming around at the end? And did you buy it? So, but the author's job in the hotel or the apartment building appears to be, you know, interacting a little bit with the girls sometimes to because she writes like really nice things in both their copies of of this book that she's written, things like that, to kind of throw them off the scent when they start getting suspicious, because when they start getting suspicious, they come to her, you know, for advice, because she wrote a book on the apartment building. And I think her, you know, she's supposed to sort of throw them off the scent a little bit. That's interesting on this one. Now she has a kidney problem. This one I have to, this one I have to trim the bottom for some reason, which I don't know why, but you know what? I'm not going to. I'm just going to center this the best I can and not worry about it. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm going to pierce my hole after the fact, like I did on all the rest of them. Okay, so now we have to pick what we want here. Oh, I said I was going to do the bell. Now the bell, I did mess up the bell a little bit when I glued it down, but I'm not going to fix it. So just don't mess up your bell and it'll be fine. But if you did mess up your bell, what you would do is you would repunch the bell after it dried fully. Excuse me. You could repunch the bell after it dried fully and then stick it down. And then punch your hole and pierce it. So, but the author who she sort of befriends or thinks she befriends or whatever, she is in need of a kidney, and she ultimately gets the main character's kidney at the end of the book when we find out it's all an organ harvesting scheme. But she there's a scene between her and the main character where the author seems to have actually kind of liked the main character and feels bad. Of course, not bad enough to not take her kidney. And it's just one of those things where I was like, I'm not sure I buy this. So, like, it doesn't at all. All right. Another envelope done. So, let me know if you thought that worked or not. If you bought her journey as a character. I think if I was going to buy her journey as a character, I might have needed more interactions between her and the main character. Her being the author. If I was going to buy the author's journey to redemption, then I was going to need a little bit more in terms of their relationship. But I don't know. So Jules's friend disappeared. Jules moves to the apartment. She makes friends with another one of the apartment sitters. That girl eventually disappears. And Jules wants to figure out, you know, how, why, what happened to her. And so she starts doing an investigation into the hotel. and the people who live in the hotel and the history of the hotel. And it turns out that the hotel is super creepy, and it's had a lot of unexplained deaths over the years, and people think that it's maybe haunted because there was a death cult at one point in the hotel. They think maybe it's cursed because a doctor who used to live in the hotel used to experiment on the servants in the hotel, or in the apartment. It's an apartment. I keep saying hotel. It's an apartment. I'm probably going to continue saying hotel. So there's a doctor who used to experiment on the servants of people who lived in the hotel because he was trying to find a cure for the Spanish influenza. And he's related to the doctor who's the main character. And I'm going to use this and this on the next page. And so she finds out all this creepy stuff about the hotel and its history, and none of that matters. None of it matters, not really. The only thing that even comes close is the doctor experimenting on the servants. And he kills a bunch of them. So he kills a bunch of the people he experiments on. And it just seems like that's the through line, you know, because his descendant, his great-great-grandson or whoever, is the doctor in the book who she has a fling with and who steals her kidney. And yeah, I would have just preferred that the hotel was either haunted or it was a cult or something. I think we'll do it like this. I like the stripes above the newsprint versus the newsprint over the stripes. I think it's more fun the other way, so we'll do it like this. All right, so Priya says, I wonder what the criteria for all these books to make it to the best-selling list is. Some are just not that great. Maybe it's not the books and it's just me. Bev says, I think book lists are kind of like when they pick Academy Awards pictures. I don't always agree with those picks either. And Kimberly says, I agree. Bestsellers that aren't that great irk me. And Joyce says, I thought right away the cult theory was just a red herring. Yeah, I just think it would have been more fun. I just think it would have made a more fun book. In which case it would have been the doctor experimenting on his patients that was a red herring. But it's, you know, because it could have gone either way, but it went the more like way, I guess. The way I was less interested in. Especially for a book advertised as being about being like Rosemary's Baby, which is about a cult of rich people who live in an apartment building. So, yeah. So I don't know. You know, I just felt like once we got into organ harvesting, there was so much in terms of logistics and keeping a secret and people who'd have to be paid off that I just didn't buy it at all. Whereas, you know, with a cult, everyone's in the cult, right? You have to be in the cult to move into the apartment building. And, you know, if someone tries to leave the cult, then you just get rid of them. Although, I suppose, well, I was going to say, I suppose if it's a cult, you don't need anyone to live in the apartment building, but you do because you need people to sacrifice for your cult. So, either way. Bestsellers, to the bestsellers thing, that's going to be by popularity. And popularity will have quite a bit, you know, it's literally which ones sell the most. So, in a given period of time. So, it's popularity, and sometimes you gain popularity because your book is good. Sometimes you gain popularity because your book is well marketed. Recently, there's been a number of little mild scandals where authors have been bulk buying their books and pushing themselves up the bestseller list. that way, which is an interesting tactic. So, so that's been a thing. New York Times has had to kind of take a couple people off the list in the last year for, you know, for engaging in that behavior. So, yeah. All right, just going to make sure everything fits. But anyways, yeah, I mean, the book was fine. I think if you just wanted to read a thriller, then it would work just fine. You know, it's a thriller. It has all the pieces and parts. And it at least tried to do something different with some of the themes it played with. But I've read more interesting haunted house books this year. And I've read more interesting thrillers. So I don't know. Did it get my usual rating? Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. So I gave it 3 stars, which is the only rating I ever give books because I hate all books, as you know. Although I mentioned last week that I was trying to read 7 books in 1 week, and I actually did do it. So congratulations to me. And I had more than 1 5-star I read last week. So yeah. Yes, I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I read all of the books this month, so I could comment on whether or not I think you picked the right one. And I don't think you did. I don't think you did. I gave Things You Save in a Fire 3 stars. I gave Lock Every Door 3 stars. And I gave Gods of Jade and Shadow 4 stars. So, so there you go. So there you go. Gods and Jade of Shadow is about a impoverished relative who is living with a rich relative. And they're basically being treated as a servant. And one day, in an act of like anger at the treatment and everything that goes along with it, she decides she's going to steal something. And so there's this chest that's always locked. And so she goes to steal what's in it. And when she opens it, it's the god of death. And he stabs her in the finger with one of his bones. So her life force is tied to his life force. And the only way to get rid of him, as he's slowly leeching the life out of her, the only way to get rid of him is to help him on his quest, which is to reclaim his place as King of the Dead. So, and that's what the book is about. She's got to help him or she'll die. And if she doesn't help him in time, she'll die. But so will he. So there is definitely the element where they have to work together, because once he ties them together, they kind of have to, it's, you know, they either will succeed together or they'll fail together. One of the Mayan gods of death specifically. And so that's what that's about. And so she and he go, not only they go to Mexico. Parts of the book take place in what I think which is in what's now Texas. No, it was Texas at the time. It was so take place in Texas. Some parts of it take place in Baja. Some parts of it take place in the Yucatan. Some parts of it take place in the underworld. There's gods, there's demons, there's spirits, people, all kinds of interesting stuff happens. So I think that one, you know, if that sounds interesting to you, check it out. It was well written. So, and it was more exciting for sure. So, but, so that's that one. going to do Santa. And then Things You Save in a Fire is much like Lock Every Door, where I think it's fine. I think it has all of the elements it needs to be a contemporary romance, and that if you usually enjoy contemporary romance, you'll enjoy Things You Save in a Fire. Just like I think if you enjoy thrillers, you'll enjoy Lock Every Door. I didn't not enjoy Lock Every Door. I just want to reiterate that when I give a book 3 stars, it means that I liked it. It just means I don't think it was extraordinary in any way. You know? So it doesn't mean I thought it was bad. It just means I thought it was totally fine. I think Priya read Haroon and the Sea of Stories. That was from the first month when we were reading fairy tales. Next month, we'll be reading books based on other books. And so we have a book based on Moby Dick. We have a book based on Jane Eyre. And we have a book based on Pride and Prejudice. And every single time I mentioned those books prior to today, I said the third book was based on Howard's End. I don't know why that got stuck in my head or how that got stuck in my head, because as I was writing up the book descriptions today, it was so obvious that it was Pride and Prejudice. I was just like, did I never read this book's description? What on earth? So yeah, it was Pride and Prejudice. It was Pride and Prejudice. So those are the 3. All these books are well rated, well received, very popular. You know, we'll see. And I just want to say, like, I expect to give most books 3 stars. So I don't when I go into a book, I expect I'll be giving it 3 stars at the end. And when I don't, because I give it 4 or 5 stars, then I'm very happy. But you know, if you think about the bell curve, it's just most books are going to get 3 stars. You know, I'm not surprised by that, and I'm not disappointed when that happens. So, but yeah, when we got to the end of Lock Every Door, my sister said, "This is like the lamest twist ever," and I think that was really the problem for me. Is I agreed. I didn't get to the end and go, "Ooh, so that's what was going on." So that was the real problem. All right, so I'm going to combine these 2 instead of what's on the back of this one, because we haven't used a plaid yet. And I think it'll be fun to use a plaid, at least once. Now, in the chat, they're talking about Haroon and the Sea of Stories, which was one of the books that didn't get picked earlier in the year, and how good it is. To be fair to the other authors that we've read this year, Haroon and the Sea of Stories is written by one of the greatest living authors of the English language. So, you know, one would expect it to be good. It would just not to take anything away from him for writing a good book, but I'm not expecting as much from Riley Sager as I am from Salman Rushdie. So see, you think Organ Stealing was more of a twist than a cult because it was more original. See, I just felt like an urban legend. Like that after she, on her way escaping from the organ harvesting, she was going to fall in the sewer and get eaten by an alligator. You know, that's how it felt to me. So, um, so that's, which is why ratings are so subjective for books because people experience books differently. Well, I mean, I think the book would have been written differently if it wasn't meant to be a cult. In other words, the cult was the red herring, so the organ harvesting is the twist. And if the intention was for it to be a cult the whole time, the writing would have to be different so that you didn't guess it was a cult because the main character guessed it was a cult. But um but yeah, I mean, again, people are always going to experience things differently. There are books that people give 5 stars that I'm like, huh? Did we read the same book? What the heck? You know, a lot of the books, I mean, I don't read books that I'm trying to give 5 star or 3 stars to. I hope every book I read is going to be 5 stars. And I do a lot of research and try and pick books that are very well rated because I feel like maybe I'm going to have a better chance of getting a 5 star read. But that's not always the case. As in the case of a lot of books I read this year, which people were like, "Oh, it's one of my favorites of the year," and I was like, "Okay, if you say so." What else did you read? Did you read The Quest for the Holy Grail? Because if you did, I understand why you picked this one. Priya says, I don't think ratings make sense anymore. I think it's because, like, if you go on Goodreads, if a book has, you know, over 4 stars, it's a good guess. It's a pretty solid book. But under 4 stars, it's a huge, wide spread. And I think it's because people tend to rate books in general higher than I do. Um, because I think people do think that 3 is not a good rating. You know, that 3 is getting into being a bad rating. Maybe we should revisit some classics. Well, I thought about that. So maybe we will. Priya says, I wasn't brave enough to explore the Holy Grail book yet, but I did read The Old Man and the Sea. Is it your new favorite book? Okay, so I need to shave a little bit off this. So, yeah, so let's. Maybe that's it, Gretchen. Maybe the more books you read, the more likely you are to rate a book lower. Because if you only read 5 books a year, and let's say they're books I would have given 3 or 4 stars, but for you, that you're just everything you read is good. Everything you're reading is falling on the good end of the spectrum. Maybe that's an interesting theory. All right, you want some 5 star recommendations? Let me tell you what I gave 5 stars this week. Okay. Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones, which is a book about werewolves written by a member of the Blackfeet Nation. And the book is very much about displacement and belonging, and there are a lot of parallels to the indigenous experience, and there's a lot of social commentary kind of around that. but it's about a family of werewolves. They are werewolves. So it's a very interesting take on werewolves. It's totally unique because, of course, it's not really rooted in the typical French, origins of werewolves that I think a lot of werewolf books are kind of come down from that tradition. So that book is really interesting. What else did I rate? Oh, The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. You need a strong stomach for that one, like you do with all her books. But if you've liked other Gillian mongrels, yes, like a dog, like a mangy dog, a mongrel, yeah. By Stephen Graham Jones. Very much a novel about belonging, colonialism. Yeah, there's a lot of social commentary in it, but it's mostly about. This is one of those books that I like where you can read it on two levels, because you can read it on the surface level and it's an interesting book about werewolves. And if you're not constantly meditating on the social commentary, it's still a good book. But if you want to meditate on the social commentary behind what he's saying, then you can do that too. And then there's another layer on which you can experience the book. So that's Mongrels by Stephen Graham Jones. What is the last book I mentioned? Grown Up. The Grown Up by Gillian Flynn. It's very short. It's like 100 pages. It's a short story she wrote because George R.R. Martin asked her to write him a story, and it's about a haunted house, actually. So, or maybe it's haunted, maybe it's not. So it's kind of similar on some level to this one. But if you're not familiar with Gillian Flynn, I will give you some warnings about her. Is that all of the people she writes about are extremely messed up. So when you read a book by Gillian Flynn, you are going to be put into the head of someone with a ton of problems. And usually the way I feel about her characters is, I want you to do well. I want your life to improve. I would like you to go do it over there in another state from me, and I don't want you around me. So, and I don't want you to talk to my kids or whatever. So, so just know that you're not going to be reading about a good person doing good things when you pick up a Gillian Flynn book. But a lot of them have reasons for being the way that they are. So it's not like they have other options than, it's not like they had every opportunity to be a good person and they just chose not to. It's more like they have very limited opportunities for one reason or another. And it's different reasons in all of her books. There's one book where the main character's entire family is axe murdered when she's like 5. And it's like, well, what are you supposed to do after that? So no wonder she has problems. And, there's another one who has they always have problems. The main characters do. So just with the Grown Up, just know it's going to start off and you're going to be like, what on earth is Kathryn recommending? Why is this woman just talking about what she's talking about? But it's gonna change, okay? So, what else? I feel like I read another 5-star. Oh, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I also gave 5 stars. And that one's about physics. And I was hesitant to even pick it up. And I loved it. Candy likes happy books. If you like happy books, I gave Crazy Rich Asians 3 stars. So, that's something. Check out Natalie Tan's Book of Luck and Fortune, which I also gave 3 stars. And if you like romances, I tried to read some romances to see if I could find some 5-star ones, and I read The Bride Test, and that was kind of fun. Priya says she loved Dark Matter. Yeah, Dark Matter is great. I recommend it. And don't be put off by the fact that I just said it's about physics. Because just because a book is about quantum physics doesn't mean that it's written in a way that you, as a person who doesn't spend a lot of time with quantum physics, can't understand and can't appreciate. So I just want to say that I'm going to say that that's where I think Blake Crouch is a pretty masterful writer, is that he wrote a book about quantum physics that I completely understood, had no problem at any point grasping what was going on, and really enjoyed. So there you go. Priya says it was so gripping and the nerd in me loved it. Yeah, Gretchen said I hated Crazy Rich Asians. I rated Crazy Rich Asians 2 stars originally, and then I rethought about it and I rated it 3 stars. And I'll tell you why I changed it. I changed it because it didn't have any technical problems. And so I felt like 2 stars was too harsh, because I didn't think Crazy Rich Asians should be rated below a book like Lock Every Door when they were on the same level technically. And what I hated about Crazy Rich Asians was all the endless descriptions of the clothing and the jewelry and the cars, and that I thought that it would be possible that would not annoy someone who read contemporary books on a regular basis, particularly contemporary books that focus around fashion. But what I will say is that I thought the movie was much better. And the reason I thought the movie was much better is because the things that I thought were good about the book were amplified, and the things that I thought were bad about the book were minimized. So the things that I thought were good about the book were the social and family commentary and the social and family dynamics and the, class dynamics. And that was all amplified in the film. And then the stuff that I didn't find interesting in the book was all the endless descriptions of luxury, this, that, and the other thing. And in the movie, it's just on screen, and you can either care about it or not. You know what I mean? But people aren't talking about it constantly in the movie. So there you go. Okay, so we only have 2 circles left of each color, so we need to... have I read The Elephant Tree? No, I have not read The Elephant Tree. If you like happy endings... Oh, I gave happy ending recommendations. Forget it. Oh, The Bride Test. I gave The Bride Test 4 stars, which surprised me because it's a contemporary romance. Yeah. I don't usually like those very much. I mean, I don't hate them. I just don't, love them. I normally give them 3 stars. So for one to get a 4th star is a pretty big deal for me. So that probably means that those of you who love contemporary romance normally will hate it, but but who knows? Maybe you'll like it. By Helen Huang. Spelled, I think, Hoang. Yes. So there you go. There's a bunch of books for you to check out, whether you like happy endings or hate happy endings. All right, so we need to pick... Yeah, I mean, that's fine. So, but yeah, I think of the books that didn't get chosen from July Book Club, the one I would say is most worth your time is Gods of Jade and Shadow. I think that one's really interesting. Really very interesting. And I read it pretty much all at once, It kept my attention the whole time, and I didn't like get bored with it and go to a different book or anything like that. But I'm glad those of you who have been downloading and using the Libby app and are finding it convenient, I'm so happy that you are finding that app useful. And for those of you that have been reading more this year than you have in other years, that was the goal. You know, the goal was the average, well, not the average American, but the most common answer an American, and I know not all of you are from the United States, but the most common answer a person from the United States gives to the question, how many books did you read in the last year, is 4. And so the goal this year was to at least read 10. To at least read 10. So that's what we're working on. So I'm happy to hear it. Maybe what we could do is we could read in September the classic that the August book is based on. Although, if you guys pick The Art of Fielding, that means we're going to all have to read Moby Dick. So maybe not. Maybe that's not a good idea. Maybe we should just pick 3 classics. Bev says she knew she was uncommon. Yeah, that's right. Our goal was for us all to be uncommon. And if you've read every book for book club so far, you've read 6 books. So you already are there. Candy says, I've always read a lot, but since I've discovered Libby, I've read a ton more. I'm around 30 books since June. Awesome, Candy. For me, what is so great about Libby is obviously Libby's great for ebooks as well, but it's so good for the audiobooks because audiobooks are expensive, or you have to subscribe to Audible, which is expensive. And with Libby, you can get audiobooks that you're only going to want to read them once. You don't need to really own them, and then that gives you something fun to listen to when you're doing your chores, folding your laundry, sitting in the car in traffic, whatever, and you can read so much more in a year because of that. Than otherwise. Well, Mr. Lifeguard and I read totally different genres as well. He really pretty much only likes sci-fi, and he particularly likes books that are physics-based. So when I finished Dark Matter, I asked him if he'd read it, and he hadn't. So he's going to read it so we can talk about it, because we can never talk about books because he only reads science fiction, and I almost never, hiccups. I almost never read science fiction. So... yeah, I think he's going to love it. That's why I was pretty sure he would have read it already. And then if he likes it, I think we'll both read Recursion, which is another Blake Crouch physics book. But yeah, Lock Every Door. I mean, it was fine. And I'm going to go see the movie. And I think as a movie, it will be better. Because as a movie, she's just going to be running up and down the halls. There's going to be spooky sounds, creepy music. Everyone's going to seem extra sinister. I think it's going to be more fun as a movie. I'm not the kind of person that thinks the book is always better. I definitely think that some stories are better as books, and some stories are better as movies, and some stories work well as both. And yeah, there should be children saying red rum. We should have a weird 70s style geometric carpet as an homage to the Overlook. I would say it's probably rare. I'm more likely to say a book is better than to say a movie is better. And, you know, whenever people are like, well, what's an example of a movie that's better? Sometimes it takes me a minute to think of one. But I usually give the example of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo book and the original Swedish adaptation, which is not to say that the book is bad, because the book is not bad, but there's a whole long section in the middle about Nazis and the history of the Nazis and Germany with Sweden, and the history of like the neo-Nazi parties in Sweden and all that kind of stuff. And I was just like, I mean, this is interesting, but it's really taking me away from the drama of what was going down just now. So I wasn't, what happens is, of course, none of that's in the movie, you know. Like in the movie, it'll just be like, oh, isn't so-and-so a Nazi? And then it's like, okay, then that's it. They move on. You don't have to have like the entire history of the movement within Sweden. And so that was why I think it works a little bit better as a movie. But but the books are great. They're fantastic. So it's not, you know, it's not like the books are bad. I saw the Daniel Craig movie years after I'd seen the Swedish one, and it was one of those things where it just didn't, you know, there was nothing wrong with it, and I'm sure I would have liked it more if it had been the first adaptation I'd seen, but it wasn't the first adaptation I'd seen, so it felt, I was like, was this really necessary? Do we need two of these? That was kind of where I landed. I do think the Swedish one's a little bit better, again, which is not to say that I think that the English language one is bad, but I think the Swedish one's a little bit better. And they did all three. So you can watch, well, not all, I mean, I think there's more books than three, but they did three. They did three of them. They did the original Millennium trilogy. Okay, so here we go. I haven't read that. I have, yeah, the three that were written by the original author before he died. Right. Yeah. I have not read that book, Judy. I have seen it recommended quite a bit lately. So I do think it's interesting. Now, for classics, one of the classics that I was thinking about, if you want to read classics, is Little Women, since the movie came out. So, of course, there's Pride and Prejudice. If we read the Pride and Prejudice book, that might be fun. Or conversely, Jane Eyre, if we read the Jane Eyre book. All right, I think we've used every pattern once. Oh, no, we haven't. Just kidding. All right, this is the only pattern that we haven't used. I think we'll do this one on a brown envelope. Okay. And let's do, should we do red on the bottom and green on the top? Or should we do green on the bottom and red on the top? Pat says that Pride and Prejudice is the first book she never finished because she hated it. That's so funny. I like the green on the top better. I think it's because the red has more visual weight because there's so much white on this pattern, so it looks better on the bottom because you perceive it as heavier, and heavier things typically fall down to the ground and lighter things float. All right, 4 1/4. Well, yeah, that's the thing, because I was like, I don't know how many classics I want to reread. I'm not a huge rereader of books in general, so um, so I don't know. I don't know. And I don't know if I want to put classics on the list that I haven't read. So I don't know. I don't know. But I did read all the Little Women series books when I was younger, so I've read all of them. If you read Pride and Prejudice, you don't remember. That's funny. I don't think Pride and Prejudice, personally, I think that even though it's kind of more contrived in the sense that in Emma, I'm talking about Emma, which I think I prefer some of the messaging in Emma to the messaging in Pride and Prejudice, and that just happens to do with Mr. Knightley is more of an ethical person at the start of the book, and consistently he doesn't have a character development arc because he's already a good person, and so it's more about the main character, developing herself, and it's kind of just oh, hi, hello, Tiny, where are you going? I don't know. So I think that one's just a little bit more interesting because Tiny, can you come over here? Can you come over here, please? Your friends want to say hi. No, don't jump up there. Come on. Come here. Come here. No. Okay. I tried. I tried, but she ran. She's exploring the shelves. Just a brief. Hey, Tinykins, what are you doing? Anyway, I don't know. I don't know about classics. I do think that we should maybe have a month of classics, but I don't know which ones. We could try and do modern classics. We could have a month where you just pick which Salman Rushdie book you're going to read. Oh. If you're so sad, why don't you come over here where the hands that pet are? She's off on the corner crying because I won't walk over there and pet her. But it's like, just come over here and get a pet. Anna Karenina is on your to be read list. I've read Anna Karenina. Good. Are you going to read Dr. Zhivago after you read Anna Karenina? Now she's just licking her face, staring at me. She's doing that thing where she sits on top of the shelf, looking like a goblin. I've seen a version of Anna Karenina. I've also read Anna Karenina. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I don't particularly appreciate media that centers around affairs. I just don't find that as interesting. Anna Karenina is one that I did read all the way through, so I did tolerate it more than I tolerated, say, like, other media like that, but it wasn't my favorite Russian novel. And funnily enough, out of the blue on my Kindle app, they recommended that I should read War and Peace the other day, and I was like, what? just out of nowhere. It was like, why don't you read War and Peace? I was like, are you trying to slow me down? Oh, Tiny. Tiny cat, why? Why? Why are you so sad? What's wrong? What's the matter? What's the matter, Tiny cat? Me, me, oh. Has anyone read A Man Called Ove? I haven't, but my sister read it and she loved it, and it's on my list. And that's Frederick Backman, right? I have 3 Frederick Backmans on my list. Come here. Okay, come here. Come here. Stop it. Stop sitting in the corner and crying. There you go. If you're going to get pets, at least be cute. At least be cute. So, they're talking about The Great Gatsby in the chat. We were playing Trivial Pursuit. And we had the question... the question was essentially, what's the name of the main character in The Great Gatsby? But they didn't say The Great Gatsby. They described the book in the question. And so my sister and I are sitting there and we're like, what's the name of the main character in The Great Gatsby? And she's like, yeah, what was his name? And I was like, well, I mean, his first name's Jay, I remember for sure, but what's his last name? And she's like, I have no idea. What's his last name? And I'm like, it's like Jay. And I said, Jay Sizzle was what I said, because I just had lost all of my brain cells. And so we just sat there saying the word Gatsby over and over and over again, trying to figure out what the name of the main character in The Great Gatsby is. It's Jay Sizzle, guys. That's who it is. It's Jay Sizzle. Jay Sizzle. That's the main character in The Great Gatsby. Famous literary icon, Jay Sizzle. We did eventually figure it out, though. So... No, if the main character is Jay Sizzle, who is Gatsby? It's his friend. It's his friend. Now, the main character of The Great Gatsby, the narrator is not Jay Gatsby, but the main character is definitely Jay Gatsby. Just some guy. He's just some guy. Just some rando from down the street. Also, weirdly, with a last name Sizzle. So, that's in fact, everyone in the book has the last name Sizzle, but none of them are related to each other. It's all aliases, yeah. They all have the real name. They all have the name Sizzle to protect the identities of the actual people the book is based on. But yeah, we did eventually, and of course, Mr. Lifeguard just sat there staring at us with his mouth open, like, what is happening? Because we had said the word Gatsby, the main character in The Great Gatsby is Jay Gatsby. So we had said the word Gatsby so many times, but it was like not in the correct context. So it was just like, what on earth is happening? But that's okay. We eventually got there. I was the one who said, wait, isn't it Gatsby? And she was like, oh, yeah. And we were like, oh. And that's what a college education that costs $100,000 gets you. So there you go. It gets you Jay Sizzle on Trivial Pursuit night. A broken thumb and Jay Sizzle, exactly. That's it. Okay, so now we have to start reusing paper. Aw, Tiny's in her little house. Tiny, why are you so antisocial? Why are you so antisocial, huh? Okay. This sure feels like a lot of pouch-a-lopes, doesn't it, Fran? No, you're Gretchen. I'm sorry. Doesn't it, Gretchen? I saw like your comment and then I saw the thanks, Fran, above it, and I just merged it all together. All right, so we're going to reuse some of these papers. My apologies. All right, I'm going to use these two together with this tree. All right. We only have 2 more pouch-a-lopes and then we'll be free to do other things. So we're getting there. We're going to be done with the pouch-a-lopes on the outside back. We're not done with the pouch-a-lope. I don't even know why I said we're going to be done with the pouch-a-lopes, because we're not. But we're going to have finished doing this part of the pouch-a-lopes. I don't think I like them better turned over. Okay. Oh, and there's some stuff in here. Wait, hold on. Yeah, what if we do... Oh, what about this one? There we go. Let's do that. Now that we have all our scraps out, Okay. Okay. I've got all the scraps together now, so the next one should be fine. All right, so I'm going to cut these down to size and we'll use them. Once more with this project, I've bitten off more than I can chew because, like, we still have to do a box. What was I thinking? Why did I let you talk me into 12 pouch-a-lopes? I blame you for this. So, I don't know if that's fair. I don't remember how it went down. But I feel like it was your fault. But that's okay. We'll get through it. Fran says sorry. Thank you, Fran. I appreciate it. I appreciate you owning your mistakes. Yeah, the universal you. I blame all of humanity for this, excepting myself. All right, so we have 3 books for next month. The voting is open. If you want to vote on the August book club book, check this video description for the link to the Glitter Gang Facebook group, because that's where the voting is. It's pinned as an announcement. And the 3 books are The Art of Fielding, which is a book about baseball that is inspired by Moby Dick. We have we have Aisha at Last, which is actually a book about Pride and Prejudice. And it is, or book, it's not a book about Pride and Prejudice. It's a book inspired by Pride and Prejudice. So it deals with marriage and big families and family dynamics and things of that nature. And then the 3rd book is, and that book is Aisha at Last. I don't know if I said what it was called. And then the 3rd book is Jane Steele, which is based on Jane Eyre, in which Jane is now a serial killer instead of a governess. So that's a twist. And that's the one that's most closely linked to its source material, in that it's a retelling and not just inspired by. So those are your choices for August. I will tell you that the one that has the most ratings on Amazon is The Art of Fielding. So that one's been rated the most times. But I think I think both Jane Steele and Aisha at Last are rated higher. So I think like The Art of Fielding has like 4 stars, and the other 2 have 4.5 stars. I should check what they all are on Goodreads, because if any of them are under 4 stars, then we're in for it. And if you don't like any of these choices, blame Book Riot, because they're the list I went off of. So they wrote the list I went off of. So it's their fault. Because as you know, I don't make decisions anymore. Because that hasn't worked out in the past. And the thing is, you know, I've thought of just picking 3 books that that don't necessarily have any connection between them, but are just books that I want to read. But that's not even a guarantee they'll be good, because as I've said many times, I rate most of the books I read 3, or well, the rating that I give the most is 3 stars. So it's not like I am necessarily any good at guessing, any better at guessing what is going to be good than anyone else. So, oh, yes, that's right. I did say we were going to do books with a cat on the cover. Thank you, Joyce. That's what we'll do for, should we do that for October? Or for October, should we do scary books? I need to trim this a little bit. No, Stephen King, his books are too long. We'd have to read one of his short stories. He doesn't really, I mean, we could, I guess I could pick from his novellas, but his books are long. Ooh, Dean Koontz. But Stephen King does write novellas and short stories, so we could pick from those. I almost read Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption for my books that I read in when I was trying to read 8 books or 7 books in 1 week, but I couldn't get it from the library in time, so. The Body is a good short story. The Body and Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption are in the same collection as well. So they're in the same collection of novellas and short stories. And The Body is the basis for Stand By Me. And Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption is the basis for Shawshank Redemption. But with Stephen King, I tend to prefer his books. I tend to prefer his books that are mostly grounded in reality, but just a little off kilter. So like The Green Mile is an example. You know, that's not, I mean, there are fantastic, you know, supernatural type of elements in that book, but the book is mostly dealing with real world issues. So, and I think that he really does a fantastic job with that type of thing. In Lock Every Door, they also get in through an entrance behind the bookshelf. Yeah, and why does it need to, why do there need to be secret passageway? I guess that was, I mean, I felt like that was kind of an homage to the murder hotel from The Devil in the White City. Well, not from the Chicago Fair, the H.H. Holmes house. Whenever I read a book that's like someone's running around in a building with secret passageways killing people, I always think of that. Because it's not something that really happens a lot, but well, and that's the other thing, like, why did they need to scare them before they, I don't know, you know, they didn't need to scare them before they kidnapped them. They just needed to like let them do their thing and then get kidnapped one day. Like, there were a lot of things that the bad guys did that would clue in people who were paying any attention at all. Like the whole thing that you couldn't go out at night, that didn't need to be a rule. You know, because if they went out one night and you wanted to kidnap them, you could just kidnap them the next night. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't need to alert them to the fact that something weird was going on with all of their crazy rules. So a lot of that was, like you said, Ella, just there, I think, just to make suspense happen. But you know, there should have been other ways that kind of make more sense. This is a book that has a lot of fridge moments, which is what you call something in TV where you accept it while you're watching the episode, and then when you think about it later while you're looking in your fridge, you're like, wait a minute, that's not, we didn't need that. That doesn't make any sense, you know? You want glitter on the tree? All right. Let's do silver. We'll do some silver bells with a wink of Stella pen in the color silver. And then I'll go through and do some gold. Yeah, so Cindy's saying those rules were probably there to get them to withdraw from their family and friends and cut ties. Yeah, I think that they're, the implication, because, they want to know about her social media presence, and of course she doesn't have any for social media and things like that. But, you can find people who don't have ties to their community. You don't have to take people with ties to their community and then make it so they don't have ties to their community. I just think they are making this harder on themselves, they being the evil villains who supposedly have unlimited resources. And yet were completely overthrown and defeated by someone in their 20s who took a job with them in the first place, so is probably not a super genius. All right, so now we have a glittery tree. Woo! But also, I'm not a person who thinks that suspending disbelief is my job. I'm a person who thinks that I won't have to do that if the author does their job. So, stuff like this, I will nitpick in a book where I wasn't swept away. Other books where there are dumb premises, I'll go along with it if the writing is more skillful. An example of this, I would say, would be The Night Film by Marissa Pessel, or Marisha Pessel, which is last one, friends. And that book has a lot of fantastical elements. There's a point in the book where people are having a conversation trying to figure out if voodoo is real. And like if you can really cast curses on people. And by the people, I mean the main characters in this book, who are all journalists, highly educated, went to Ivy League schools, very credulous, not very so they're people who wouldn't normally even consider that was a possibility, but what's happening to them is so crazy that they start to consider the possibility. And I was like, maybe, maybe, I don't know. So, because I was swept up on, swept away by the story, and I wasn't questioning everything so much. So, and I think that whether or not a book or a piece of media will put me into the mode where I'm going to be questioning everything and complaining about everything or not will have to do with the book itself and how good it is, or the movie itself and how good it is. Because when you watch, like, let's just say the Lord of the Rings movies, you're not sitting there the whole time like, but elves aren't real, guys, just because, well, because they feel real enough in the setting. All right, so last one. Did that make sense? I don't know. Look, I already told you I just hate everything I read, so it's just how it is. But I'm looking forward to the movie. I think it'll be fun to see the movie. The chat's torn between if you're going to watch a movie, you need to have a little acceptance of a situation and hi, kitty. Oh, hello. How's it going? How's it going, kitty? You're standing on my trimmer. Hi. Hi, buddy. How's it going? How is it? How's everything? Can you come over here? Can you come over here and stand on the desk? Okay. All right, just go back downstairs. That's fine. All right, so I'm just gonna trim down the blue swirl. Okay. Mitty, Kitty's twin. That's right. Yeah. So there's a debate in literary criticism over the phrase "willful suspension of disbelief," which was first used by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, who wrote an epic poem after getting high about people who lived in a fantastical world. And he criticized another writer who wrote a poem, let's just say, to be totally nice, was inspired by his poem, maybe, or at least the fact that he'd written this fantastical poem. And he was criticizing this other person's poem, and he said because it required willful suspension of disbelief. So what some scholars think is that he meant that your suspension of disbelief should be automatic and not willful, meaning you don't have to suspend your disbelief. You don't have to let it go. You just don't engage it because the author, his story feels real to you, or her story feels real to you. And you don't question it because it doesn't, nothing makes you think, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. But there are people who think that whenever you embark on enjoying a piece of media, you should willfully suspend your disbelief, which is that it's your job as the reader to just accept that you're reading a piece of fiction and there's going to be a certain amount of unreality, and to stop questioning everything. So that's the two sides of the debate. And I fall more on the side where I shouldn't have to actively do this. I should just go with it. And I have read plenty of books with, crazy stuff happening where I just accepted the crazy stuff that was happening. I would say an example of this from earlier this year was when I read The Underground Railroad by Colson Whitehead, which is the Underground Railroad is literally a railroad underground in that book. And there's other sort of magical realism elements to it that beyond just that, you know. And of course, you could think to yourself, well, obviously that's just doesn't make sense, because if it was a real railroad, it would be discovered immediately, and how would they even build it, and this, that, and the other thing. You don't think about any of that when you're reading the book, because it doesn't matter, because he's telling you something else and you're along for the ride. So and there's just writers that are better at this than other writers. Fran says, my mom, while on acid, discovered the secrets to the universe. It all had to do with an egg, but she couldn't remember the next day. Yes, like driving a car across glowing lava in Dante's Peak. So anyway, which is just to say that for whatever reason, Riley Sager didn't engage that within me to the extent that other writers have in the past. And that is fine. And that's why Riley Sager got a 3, which means the book was good. It was fine. It did everything it promised it would do. Unlike Footprints in the Sand, which got a 2. So we definitely a step up from last month. I had way more problems with Footprints in the Sand than I did with Lock Every Door. Yeah, it wasn't on the Pulitzer list for a reason. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's fine. All right, we're almost done. We're almost there. Footprints in the Sand should have received only 1 star because the flip-flops on the front were false advertising. It's true. The flip-flops were complete false advertising. How dare they put flip-flops on the flip-flops on the cover? And Underground Railroad won the National Book Award. Yeah. I mean, it may have won a Pulitzer, but I do know for sure it won a National Book Award. I recently read A Brief History of 7 Killings, which won the Man Booker Prize, and in it the narrator is dead, and you also are fine with it. You're just like, all right, the narrator's dead. Here we go. Or at least you might not have been fine with it. I was fine with it. So and good riddance to the narrator. I know, that guy was the worst. I think I gave The Unhoneymooners 2 stars. If I didn't give it 2 stars, there's no way I gave it more than 3 stars. But I did not care for The Unhoneymooners. I gave it 2 stars. Although I do think The Unhoneymooners is probably more competently written than Footprints in the Sand, but I also thought we just didn't need the entire second half of the book. So well, yeah, the narrator and the next project will be the remaster of the after the Catch-A-Tag remaster will be the remaster of the box set album. with the En Vogue paper. We made it to the end. Look at that. We did it. All of them are covered. And they all have their closures. So when we come back tonight, we will talk about what goes inside them. And then, I don't know what we'll do after that. But we'll definitely talk about what goes inside them. So we've got all of our envelopes so far. How cute are they? Lots of displaying of paper in this album. I don't know, Barbara Jean. I doubt it. I doubt it. Yeah, we're going to put them in a box. That's right. Thank you, Ellen. So after we're done doing their insides, we're going to make the box for them to live in. Thanks. I'm glad someone remembered what we were doing. I'm glad someone remembered. All right, so that's that. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great evening or afternoon. I will be back in 5 hours, which is 9 p.m. Eastern USA time. But whatever time it is where you are right now, I'll be back in 5 hours. We will do the insides of these, and then hopefully next week we'll make the box, and then we'll return to the Catch a Tag remastered and finish that up. But this is Christmas in July. There will be additional parts to come, so check for them on YouTube. Check the playlist in the video description to see the other parts in this series, and of course they'll be in the folder in the archives as well. So thanks so much for watching. I'll see you tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern USA time. Have a wonderful evening. Have a wonderful weekend if you're overseas and you're headed to bed. The rest of you, I'll see you next time. Bye now.